This story is titled, At My Friend's Anniversary Party, My Fiancé told him, relax because I'd never actually marry him. He's just my sponsor in this game. So I left the party, packed her things, changed the locks, and when she came crawling on her knees at dawn, I firmly refused while she lost everything, including her $6K savings that were in my house. Sup Reddit, I'm a 26-year-old guy, and I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts that makes you cringe just thinking about it. But here we are, and I guess sometimes life forces you into situations you never expected to share with strangers on the internet. I was with this girl, Brooke, for just over 3 years. She's 25, and we lived together for most of our relationship. When I say we lived together, I mean that in the most literal sense. But I was the one paying for everything. The condo rent was under my name, all the utilities were in my name, and I handled the groceries most of the time. She would contribute here and there, but it wasn't even close to a 50-50th split financially. Honestly, I didn't really mind it at first. I actually liked taking care of things and handling the responsibilities. It felt like I was setting up a solid foundation for something stable and long-term. I thought we were building toward a future together, and financial logistics seemed like a small price to pay for that kind of partnership. Brooke worked in luxury real estate, and before anyone gets the wrong idea and thinks that means she was rolling in money, let me clarify. She wasn't. She mostly did showings and created content for her agency's social media presence. If you looked at her Instagram, you'd think she had personally sold half the city based on all her posts. But the reality was that it was mostly coming soon posts, selfies at open houses, and inspirational stories about her grind that never actually resulted in any commission checks. Meanwhile, I work as a mechanical engineer. It's not the most glamorous job in the world, but it's solid work with good pay, excellent benefits, and long days that actually matter. I deal with real deadlines, genuine planning requirements, and actual consequences if something goes wrong. Machines don't build themselves, and manufacturing doesn't function without proper engineering. But to Brooke, it was just my technical job, like I was walking around carrying wrenches or something equally dismissive. When I wasn't working, I'd spend hours on my custom PC setup. I loved researching different components, optimizing performance specs, and cable managing everything to absolute perfection. I built the entire system myself from scratch, choosing every single part with care and attention to detail. It was my escape, my personal project, and something I could control and create with my own hands in a world where so much feels out of our control. She used to think it was cute how excited I'd get about new components or upgrades. Later in our relationship, she'd just roll her eyes whenever I'd talk about frame rates, cooling systems, or any of the technical aspects that genuinely interested me. But despite these small warning signs, I still thought we were in a good place overall. For the first year and a half of our relationship, she was genuinely sweet and supportive. She would make little Pinterest boards filled with wedding ideas and send me accidental screenshots of engagement rings with captions like, "OMG, this is so cute." We'd have those conversations about future plans that seem like casual small talk on the surface, but are actually pretty serious when you think about it. We'd discuss where we might want to live someday, whether we'd want kids, and even silly things like whether we'd get a cat or not. Those are the kind of conversations that feel light and easy, but they're actually laying the groundwork for a shared future. We were real and serious in that relationship, at least from my perspective. I had actually kept a Ring tab open in my browser for months, setting up price alerts so I'd know when there were good deals. I was genuinely trying to time everything right because I wanted to propose to her. My plan was to do it during the summer, maybe on a weekend trip to North Carolina that we'd been talking about. I had it all mapped out in my head, and I was just waiting for the perfect moment to make it happen. Then something changed, and I honestly don't know what shifted or when exactly it started happening. But Brooke began getting cold toward me, though not in the way you might expect. It wasn't like she became distant or withdrawn. Instead, she got cold in a way that felt like she was positioning herself above me, like she was looking down on me from some elevated position I didn't understand. The little jabs started coming out of nowhere. I remember one particular evening when I got home after working a 12-hour shift. I was exhausted, probably looked it too, and she took one look at me and said, "You always look so tired lately. It's giving middle-aged dad vibes." Then she laughed like she had just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. I laughed it off in the moment because I didn't want to start a fight, but I definitely felt the sting of that comment. That wasn't playful teasing between partners, that was just plain rude. Unfortunately, that wasn't an isolated incident. Over the next few days, These kinds of comments kept coming. I'd put on a playlist while cleaning the apartment, and she'd roll her eyes dramatically and say, "This music makes me feel like I'm stuck in a truck stop." When I offered to pick up Chinese takeout from our usual place, she'd sigh heavily and respond with, "We always eat the same boring crap." These weren't constructive suggestions or honest communication about preferences. They were just mean-spirited criticisms designed to make me feel small. Her attitude became absolutely unbearable, and it was completely new behavior for her. I'd never seen this side of Brooke before, and I couldn't understand where it was coming from or what had triggered this sudden shift in how she treated me. So one night after dinner, I'd finally had enough of pretending not to notice what was happening. I looked directly at her and asked straight up, "Hey, is something going on with you lately?" She didn't even bother looking up from her phone when I asked the question. I waited for a response, giving her time to process what I was saying, then followed up with, "I'm serious here." "You've been acting weird, distant, and cold," I continued, "and not in some cute, mysterious way that adds intrigue to our relationship. It's just plain mean. If something's bothering you, just tell me. Say it to my face instead of playing these passive-aggressive games. I don't have the energy for middle school behavior, and I shouldn't have to guess what's wrong when we're supposed to be partners." She finally glanced up at me, gave me this little smirk that felt incredibly condescending, and said, "Relax, you're being sensitive." That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement of my concerns, no attempt at genuine communication whatsoever. Then she got up from the table and started brushing her hair like I hadn't just confronted her about her behavior. No apology, no follow-up conversation, absolutely nothing. She acted like my concerns were completely invalid and not worth addressing. I remember just sitting there at that table thinking to myself, This is what I'm working so hard for. This is the woman I was planning to propose to." Something fundamental shifted in my perspective that night, though I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was at the time. After that confrontation, I started noticing everything with fresh eyes. I became hyper-aware of the tone in her voice whenever she spoke to me, the way she looked at me like she was constantly disappointed in my very existence, and how she barely responded when I tried to have conversations with her. But then, she would immediately light up and become animated whenever her phone buzzed with notifications from her group chats. The contrast was stark and impossible to ignore. She started calling my hobbies childish, especially my PC building projects. Whenever we had friends over, she'd refer to my custom setup as my little toy, like I was playing with action figures instead of engineering something complex and technically sophisticated. It made me realize that she didn't just disrespect me as a person. She actively disrespected anything that I cared about or found meaningful. The worst part was this look she had developed lately. She would look at me like she was constantly unimpressed, like nothing I did had any value or significance. It wasn't even just cold anymore. It had become genuinely disgusting to witness. I found myself actually feeling grossed out by the way she acted toward me. The girl I had originally fallen for used to laugh at my dumb jokes and cuddle up to me when I got home from work. Now she acted like my presence was an inconvenience, like I was nothing more than her personal Wi-Fi provider who happened to have a face attached. Still, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt because I didn't want to jump to the worst possible conclusions about someone I had loved for 3 years. I told myself that maybe she was just dealing with stress from work, or maybe she was feeling overwhelmed about something and didn't know how to communicate her feelings properly. I didn't want to assume the worst about her intentions, even though everything in my gut was screaming at me that this behavior was completely intentional and calculated. Then, one night, I was grabbing laundry from the dryer in our utility area, and I saw her phone light up on the kitchen counter. I swear I wasn't snooping or deliberately trying to read her messages. The screen just caught my eye because it was facing up and the notification was bright. It was a group chat with a few of her girlfriends, and I only saw a few messages. But those few messages were more than enough to completely change my understanding of what had been happening. One of her friends had written, "He's going to propose soon, I feel it." Another friend responded with, "OMG girl, that cold shoulder technique is actually working." Brooke had replied to this with, "He better, I've put in time LOL." Then another friend sent, "Girl, don't make it too easy for him. Make him feel like he's lucky you're still around." But the message that really stuck with me, the one that made my blood run cold, was when someone wrote, "You don't marry safe, you marry someone who scares you a little." I wasn't entirely sure what that meant at the time, but it sounded ominous and manipulative in a way that made my stomach turn. Then Brooke reacted to that message and wrote back, "Bet I'll start acting colder. Let's see if he steps up." I stared at that screen for several long seconds, just processing what I was reading. Okay, so it is intentional, I thought to myself. She's not in a bad mood. She's not stressed about work or family issues. She's literally running some kind of weird personality test to see if I'll chase her harder or prove myself worthy of her attention. What did scared even mean in this context? Like emotionally unstable? Carrying a sword? I couldn't wrap my head around the psychology behind that advice, but it was clear that this was all part of some calculated strategy. That group chat conversation changed absolutely everything for me. It was like someone had suddenly switched on all the lights in a dark room, and I could finally see all the furniture I'd been stumbling over for months. Those messages kept replaying in my head on an endless loop. He better. I've put in time, Lowell. Like our entire relationship was some kind of financial investment with guaranteed returns. Like loving someone was purely transactional, where you deposit affection and attention, and then you get to withdraw a diamond ring as your reward. The casual way she discussed manipulating my emotions with her friends made my stomach turn. These weren't teenagers figuring out how relationships work. These were grown women in their mid-20s, strategizing emotional warfare like it was completely normal behavior. They were treating psychological manipulation like it was just another dating technique you could learn from a magazine article. The worst part about this whole revelation was how cheap and transactional it all felt. If Brooke had genuinely been unhappy with our relationship, or if she had needed something different from me, an actual honest conversation could have fixed those issues. We could have talked through whatever problems existed like mature adults who cared about each other. But instead, she had deliberately chosen to play mind games, run personality tests, and create emotional obstacle courses, all designed to make me chase harder, prove more, and earn what I used to receive freely from her. And for what purpose? So she could feel like she had maximized her return on investment? So she could brag to her friends about how she had successfully trained me to value her more? So she could feel like she had manipulated me into proposing instead of me doing it because I genuinely wanted to spend my life with her? It was disturbing on a level that I couldn't even fully articulate at the time. All I knew for certain was that something that had once felt authentic and real now seemed completely manufactured and fake. The woman I thought I knew and loved was apparently running focus groups with her friends on the most effective methods to manipulate me into proposing. Everything about our relationship suddenly felt like a business strategy rather than a genuine emotional connection. But I didn't say anything to her that night. I didn't bring up what I had seen, and I didn't confront her about the group chat messages. I didn't want to start a massive fight that would just be explained away with dismissive responses like, "Girls talk like that," or "You're overreacting to harmless venting." I knew that bringing it up would only result in her making me feel crazy for having legitimate concerns about her behavior. So instead, I decided to just observe what happened next. I figured that if she was determined to play some kind of elaborate game with our relationship, I would let her play it. I'd let her think she was running things and controlling the situation. I would give her enough space and rope to dig her own crater, because I wasn't about to start begging for affection that I used to receive without having to ask for it. Unfortunately, nothing changed for the better after my discovery. If anything, her behavior got significantly worse. She started openly mocking my daily routines, telling me that I made the same 3 meals every week like a divorced dad. She said I was comfort food in human form, safe but boring. She kept complaining about how I never surprised her anymore, which was particularly rich considering she hadn't planned a single thing for us as a couple in months. No dates, no meaningful conversations, no future planning, just constant criticism disguised as constructive feedback. She had completely stopped being a partner in any real sense, and had started acting like she was auditioning for some reality show that I never signed up to be part of. I'd wake up early on weekends and start making pancakes for both of us, and she'd walk into the kitchen and say something like, look at you trying to be useful," with that particular tone of dry sarcasm that you only use when you're talking to someone you genuinely resent on some level. No thank you, no appreciation for the gesture, just that condescending commentary that made it clear she viewed my efforts as pathetic rather than thoughtful. We were watching some show together one night, and I made a casual comment about one of the characters being a little toxic in their behavior. Without missing a beat, she said, "Please, you'd probably write a whole spreadsheet on how to express your feelings properly." Then she laughed like she had just delivered the world's greatest punchline and was expecting applause for her comedic timing. I didn't even react to that comment. I just took another bite of my food and kept watching the show. But internally, I was taking notes about how our dynamic had completely shifted. It wasn't even direct insults half the time. It was her tone of voice, the looks she'd give me, and this overall, ugh, I'm stuck with this guy energy that radiated from her constantly. I started feeling like I was some sad Wi-Fi connected appliance that she couldn't return to the store. She had completely stopped asking how my day went. If I brought up something that happened at work, she'd respond with a distracted, while nodding and scrolling through her phone simultaneously. She was constantly on that device, scrolling through social media, posting stories, responding to DMs, while I sat literally 2 feet away from her feeling like an afterthought in my own relationship. But it wasn't just that she had stopped putting effort into our relationship. What bothered me more was that she seemed genuinely proud of her lack of effort. It was like she thought being cold and dismissive made her more interesting or mysterious, when in reality it just made her seem emotionally stunted and cruel. There's one particular day I remember with perfect clarity because it encapsulated everything that was wrong with how she had started treating me. We were supposed to meet up for lunch after I finished a site meeting. Nothing fancy or elaborate, just this burger place that we both used to enjoy going to together. I arrived about 5 minutes early, found us a good table, and sent her a quick text letting her know I was there and ready whenever she was. She replied 15 minutes later with, "Still getting ready. Can you just order for me?" I waited patiently, figuring she was just running a few minutes behind schedule. She finally showed up 35 minutes late, offering no apology or explanation for keeping me waiting. She just sat down and immediately started filming her food for her Instagram story, completely ignoring the fact that I had been sitting there alone for over half an hour. Now, I know that might sound like a relatively minor incident when I describe it like that. But when you stack that kind of inconsiderate behavior on top of weeks and weeks of cold shoulders, constant sarcasm, and a complete lack of effort or respect, it all adds up. It builds into this quiet resentment that sticks to your skin and follows you around throughout your day. Then came the truly petty behavior that made it clear she was intentionally trying to provoke me. She would purposefully ignore my texts while I could see she was active on social media. She'd change the thermostat settings, and then when I'd adjust it back to a reasonable temperature, she'd accuse me of being cheap and controlling. She'd leave dirty dishes sitting in the sink for 3 days straight, and then call me anal and obsessive when I'd finally ask her to rinse them off. The more I stayed calm and refused to take the bait, the worse her behavior became. It was like my refusal to snap or lose my temper was some kind of personal challenge to her. She seemed to interpret my composed responses as weakness, passivity, or just plain boring predictability. That interpretation started to become increasingly clear in how she treated me. I remember one evening when I said to her, "Hey, we haven't really hung out together this week. Want to do something, just the two of us?" Her response was immediate and cutting. "Like what? Sit around and talk about your boring job again?" That single comment was the final straw for me. I didn't say anything back to her. I just stared at her for a few seconds, processing what she had just said, then nodded quietly and walked out to the balcony. I sat outside by myself for about 20 minutes in complete silence, just thinking through everything that had been happening. This isn't a temporary phase, I realized. This is who she really is now. This is how she acts when she thinks she's in a position of power over someone. The whole "make him feel lucky you're still around" strategy from her group chat had become her entire personality, and she had committed to it completely. It wasn't some clever power move or strategic relationship management. It was just nasty, low-effort cruelty disguised as dating advice. The worst part was that it didn't make me want to fight harder for her affection or prove my worth to her. Instead, it made me look at her like she was fundamentally defective as a person, like someone who had taken a genuinely good situation and deliberately torched it for her own entertainment. I could have confronted her about everything at that point. I could have brought up the group chat messages, called out her manipulative behavior, and had the big dramatic blowout fight that she seemed to be angling for. But honestly, I didn't want to fight with her anymore. I didn't want to argue or negotiate or try to convince her to treat me with basic human decency. What I wanted was an exit strategy, because I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't spend the rest of my life with someone who treated our relationship like some kind of elaborate psychological experiment. So I made a conscious decision to disengage quietly from the relationship. I stopped asking how her day went. I stopped cooking meals unless I was personally hungry. I stopped offering to help with her little real estate promotional videos. I just pulled back and became emotionally unavailable in the same way she had been treating me for months. The interesting thing was that she didn't even notice this change at first. Or maybe she did notice but didn't want to bring it up because addressing it would ruin her acting cold to make him chase me strategy. I started sleeping on the very edge of our bed, putting in longer hours at work, and stopped inviting her to run errands with me or do basic couple activities. I stopped making small talk entirely. The only words we really exchanged were practical things like, "Can you grab almond milk if you go out to the store?" That was essentially the extent of our communication. She had stopped being my girlfriend months earlier. I was just the person keeping the lights on and paying the bills. I wasn't bothering to ask why she was treating me so poorly anymore, because I already had my answer from that group chat. I wasn't planning some elaborate escape or dramatic exit. I didn't need to because she was the one freeloading off my generosity. I was just waiting for the right moment to end things without giving her the opportunity to play the victim or rewrite the narrative in her favor. During that stretch of radio silence between us, we got invited to a rooftop party for my buddy Derek. I've known him since college, and he's one of those solid, reliable friends. The kind of person I'd still grab coffee with even after years of not talking regularly. His fiancée Kendra was throwing the whole celebration for his birthday, and she had really gone all out to make it special. The setup was genuinely classy and well thought out. She had strung up lights everywhere, set up a nice speaker system that was playing a throwback playlist, and created this really chill atmosphere. The crowd was a good mix of old college friends, co-workers, and a few people I didn't recognize, but everyone was just relaxed and having a good time. Brooke, on the other hand, treated the party like it was her personal runway show. She spent over an hour in front of the mirror getting ready, changed outfits twice, and even filmed an outfit check video in the elevator on our way up to the rooftop. Don't get me wrong, she looked good, absolutely. But she also looked like someone who had come to impress a room full of strangers rather than celebrate and support Derek on his birthday. As for me, I was completely calm and relaxed. I had my drink in hand, made the rounds saying hello to people I knew, and posted up near the bar area. I wasn't there looking for drama or conflict. I was there to celebrate my friend's birthday and enjoy a nice evening out. But I was also there with a specific purpose that Brooke had no idea about. I had already called the moving company earlier that week. Her pickup was scheduled, I had pulled her keys from my keychain, and I had already arranged to have the locks changed on the condo. Every single logistical detail was checked off my list except for one final item. And I had a strong feeling that she was about to check that last box for me before the night was over. I didn't have to wait very long for my prediction to come true. We were standing near the drinks area with a small group of people when Kendra's cousin or friend, I don't remember exactly who it was, smiled at Brooke and then looked over at me. "You guys are seriously so cute together," she said with genuine warmth. "When's the proposal happening?" It was a harmless, polite question, the kind of thing people ask couples who have been together for a while. It was a question I'd been asked before by friends and family members, and one that I used to have an actual plan and timeline for. In that moment, I could actually feel everyone's eyes shift toward me. That collective attention you can physically sense when a group thinks they might be about to witness something special or romantic. A few people even smiled encouragingly at me, like they thought this might turn into one of those cute stories that couples tell at their wedding about how the proposal question came up at a party. The kind of moment that makes everyone feel warm and happy about love and relationships. I didn't even get a chance to open my mouth or formulate any kind of response. I'd rehearsed answers to this question before. Standard deflections like, "when the time is right," or "still saving up for the perfect ring," that keep everyone satisfied and don't create awkward moments. It would have been easy enough to give a diplomatic response that kept the mood light and positive. But Brooke couldn't even give me that basic level of respect. She couldn't let me maintain my dignity in front of friends and colleagues. Instead, she saw this as the perfect opportunity to inflict maximum damage in the most public way possible. Like she had been waiting for exactly this opportunity all night, she launched into her response with calculated precision. "Oh God, don't worry, I won't let him propose," she said, laughing loud enough that conversations happening nearby actually stopped. "He's like my beta placeholder, you know? The reliable guy you settle for while you figure out your real standards." Then she actually put her hand on my shoulder, like I was nothing more than a prop in her personal stand-up comedy routine. "He's great for paying bills and fixing things around the apartment," she continued, building momentum. "But marriage material?" She made this exaggerated grimace and looked around the group for approval and validation. "I need someone who can actually excite me, you know? Someone with actual ambition." Then, as if the whole thing wasn't humiliating enough already, she had the audacity to add, "No offense, babe," with a patronizing pat on my arm. Like I should somehow be grateful for the clarification about how she really viewed me and our 3-year relationship. A few of her friends who were standing nearby actually snickered at her performance. One of them even nodded in agreement, like this was some brilliant piece of social commentary rather than a deliberate public humiliation of someone she supposedly loved. She delivered the whole thing like it was genuinely funny, like I wasn't standing right there next to her, like I was some kind of inanimate object that couldn't hear or process what she was saying about me. But here's the thing that really got to me. She was the one who had been dying for me to propose. She was the one sending me accidental screenshots of engagement rings for months. She was the one strategically leaving bridal magazines around our apartment and telling her mother what our wedding colors should be. She was the one who had been playing this twisted game of acting cold to make me chase her, specifically to get that proposal she claimed she didn't want. The sheer audacity of it all was breathtaking. She was publicly humiliating me as part of her manipulation strategy. In her completely warped mind, this was supposed to be the final test, the moment where I was supposed to man up and prove myself worthy by defending our relationship. Maybe she even expected me to drop to one knee right there on the rooftop, to show her how wrong she was about me and how much I valued what we had together. She expected me to compete for her affection, to beg and plead and prove my worth to someone who clearly thought I had none. I could see it in her eyes. That smug confidence of someone who thinks they're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. She thought she was forcing my hand in some masterful power play. That after this little performance, I'd finally realize what I might lose and do whatever it took to lock her down for good. What she had never considered, not even for a second, was the possibility that I might simply choose to walk away. At that moment, you could literally feel the mood in our immediate area die instantly. It was like someone had hit the mute button on all the background noise and conversation. A couple of people let out uncomfortable, awkward laughs, but mostly there was just this heavy, dead silence hanging in the air. I heard one girl nearby whisper, "Whoa!" Someone else muttered under their breath, "Did she just say that?" Derek looked at me with this expression that clearly said, "Yo, are you okay?" Kendra had literally stopped mid-step while carrying a tray of cupcakes and was just staring at our group with her mouth slightly open. As for me, I took one slow, deliberate sip of my drink, set it down on the bar, and looked her directly in the face. "Yeah, about that proposal," I said calmly. She blinked hard, like she genuinely didn't expect me to say anything in response. I could see the surprise register on her face as she realized I wasn't just going to stand there and take her public humiliation silently. I pulled the keys to our condo from my jacket pocket and dropped them on the bar directly in front of her with a solid metallic clink that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "You won't need these anymore," I said, my voice completely calm and measured. She froze completely, and I could see a few people in our immediate area glance at each other with expressions that clearly said, "What the hell is happening right now?" I kept going, still not displaying any anger or emotion. Just a man who had finally reached his limit and was handling business. "I'll let you in to pack your stuff. The movers come tomorrow. The locks are already changed." Her mouth opened, but absolutely nothing came out. She looked around the group like someone might step in and save her from this moment, but no one did. Everyone was just watching this unfold in stunned silence. "And for the record," I continued, "I never saw you as wife material, not even close." Someone in the crowd straight up gasped at that line. One guy standing near us muttered, "Damn," under his breath, clearly impressed by the directness of my response. I looked over at Derek and Kendra, who were both still processing what they had just witnessed. "Happy birthday, man," I said to Derek with genuine warmth. "Seriously, this is a great setup you've got here. Sorry for providing the extra entertainment tonight." Then I turned back to Brooke, who still hadn't moved a muscle or said a single word since I'd dropped those keys. "You wanted someone who scares you a little bit," I said, referencing that group chat message I'd seen weeks earlier. "Start with learning how to live on your own. That should be terrifying enough for you." And with that, I turned around and walked away from the entire situation. I left her standing there in complete shock, surrounded by a group of people who had just witnessed her true colors and my response to them. Behind me, I could hear the party erupt into hushed, urgent conversations, the kind of buzz that follows truly dramatic exits. Someone called my name as I was leaving. I think it was Derek, but I kept walking toward the exit. I wasn't going to make his birthday celebration about my relationship drama. I decided to let her handle the aftermath of her own behavior. Let her explain herself to a room full of witnesses who had just seen exactly who she really was when she thought she had the upper hand. let her try to spin this into another quirky anecdote for her Instagram stories. For the first time in our entire relationship, the mess she had created was hers to clean up, not mine. Her first phone call came before I had even reached the elevator. I immediately blocked the number. Then her friend Chloe started calling me, probably at Brooke's request. I ignored those calls completely. She sent me a long paragraph text about what had happened and how I had supposedly blindsided her with my reaction, claiming that I had completely overreacted to what she insisted was just a harmless joke. I left her on red without responding. The calls didn't stop for 2 solid days. She tried reaching me from every number she could think of. Her work phone, her friends' phones, probably even random numbers she found online. One message said, "I don't know why you'd humiliate me like that in front of everyone." Another one said, "You didn't even give me a chance to explain what I really meant. But here's the thing. You don't get to say what you said in front of a room full of people and then act shocked when it doesn't land the way you expected it to. That wasn't a joke that went wrong. That was a mask slipping off and revealing who you really are underneath." And I was perfectly content to let that mask stay off permanently. I blocked every number she tried to contact me from and sent one final message before cutting off all communication completely. "You spent months treating me like I was disposable," I wrote. "I just proved you right. We're done." After sending that, I blocked her main number and resolved to move forward without looking back. I thought she might finally get the message after that and just accept that our relationship was over. I figured she'd take some time to process what had happened, maybe reflect on her behavior, and then move on with her life. But I was completely wrong about that assumption. The movers came the next day exactly as I had arranged. I had given them very specific instructions about what to pack. Everything from the bedroom, her closet, and her belongings from the living room areas. I left a detailed note on the front door and emailed her the time window when they'd be there so she could coordinate with them. She didn't have keys anymore, but I knew building security would let her up when the movers arrived to supervise the packing process. I had locked my office door before leaving that morning because that room contained my personal workspace and expensive equipment that had nothing to do with her. I figured she would get her belongings. The movers would load everything up efficiently, and that would be the definitive end of our relationship. It seemed like a mature, reasonable way to handle the logistics of a breakup. I spent the morning at a coffee shop down the street from our building, nursing an overpriced latte and trying to get some work done on my laptop. I figured I'd give her plenty of space to collect her things and leave without having to deal with any awkward face-to-face confrontations. It seemed like the respectful thing to do for both of us. That turned out to be my first major mistake in handling the situation. When I got back to the condo around 4 p.m., the movers were long gone and so was Brooke, supposedly. But something felt immediately wrong the second I walked through the front door. The energy in the apartment was different, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what had changed. Then I noticed that my office door was wide open. I knew right then that she had forced her way into the one room I had specifically locked and told the movers was off limits. My custom PC setup, the one I had spent months researching, planning, and building component by careful component, was completely destroyed. The monitor screen was shattered into a spider web of cracks. The tower had been knocked over with the side panel completely caved in. My graphics card, which had cost over $800 by itself, was snapped cleanly in half. The liquid cooling system I had installed was leaking coolant all over my desk and onto the floor. Nearly $4,000 worth of carefully selected hardware had been systematically destroyed in what must have taken only a few minutes of focused rage. I checked with the movers later and confirmed that they had never entered my office at any point during the day. They told me the door was closed the entire time they were working, and they had respected my instructions to stay out of that room completely. According to their timeline, she had gone back upstairs alone after they finished loading her belongings, claiming she had forgotten something important. They didn't hear anything unusual happening upstairs, which makes perfect sense since she waited until they were completely out of earshot before doing her damage as quickly and quietly as possible. She had clearly planned this act of destruction and executed it with deliberate precision. Standing there looking at the wreckage of my custom PC, I felt something break inside me too. It wasn't anger at first. That emotional response would come later. Instead, it was this cold, hollow feeling right in the center of my chest that was almost worse than fury. That computer setup wasn't just expensive hardware that could be replaced with an insurance claim. It represented hundreds of hours of research, countless late nights spent troubleshooting technical issues, and the genuine satisfaction that comes from building something complex and beautiful with your own hands. Every single cable had been managed to perfection. Every component had been selected with careful consideration for compatibility and performance. It was the one thing in our shared apartment that was 100% mine, that I had created from nothing but individual parts and technical knowledge. Seeing it deliberately destroyed like that hit me harder than her cruel words at the party, harder than the months of cold shoulders and emotional manipulation. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment cruelty or an impulsive decision made in anger. This was calculated, premeditated destruction. She knew exactly what this computer meant to me, knew exactly how much time and money I had invested in it, and knew exactly what kind of emotional damage this would inflict. She had done it anyway, just to make me hurt the same way she was hurting. She had even left a note tucked under my keyboard, like some kind of calling card. "Bet you didn't see this coming, Mr. Predictable," it read. Very mature, very classy. Really showed the depth of character I had been dealing with for 3 years. I triple-checked with the moving company to make absolutely sure none of their employees had accessed my office. I specifically told them that room was off-limits, and the door had been closed and locked the entire time they were in the building. One of the movers mentioned that they were finishing up the final loadout downstairs when she went back up to the apartment alone. They figured she had simply forgotten something important and needed to grab it quickly, rather than calling her and screaming about what she had done, which is probably what she expected and wanted. I took a different approach. I simply took detailed photographs of every single damaged item from multiple angles. I meticulously documented each component that had been destroyed, pulled up all my original receipts and purchase confirmations, and calculated the exact total cost of replacement. The final damage came to $5,847.23. Then I sent her one straightforward email with no emotional language or accusations. "You have 48 hours to transfer $5,847.23 for property damages, or I press charges. Building security cameras caught you entering and leaving the premises. Your choice." I attached all the photographs and receipts as evidence, keeping everything factual and businesslike. Oh, and I added one final line. "I'm also adding forced entry to the police report. Not that you care about consequences, you've always been more about theatrics than actual results." Then I attached all the photographic evidence and purchase receipts, presenting everything like the legal case it was about to become. She called me immediately after receiving that email. I didn't pick up the phone. Then came a barrage of text messages that only made her situation worse from a legal standpoint. "Are you freaking serious?" one message read. "You humiliated me in front of everyone, and you're worried about your stupid computer?" Another one said, "You ruined my life," as if I had somehow forced her to destroy thousands of dollars worth of my personal property. I forwarded all of these threatening and incriminating text messages to my buddy, who practices law. He immediately sent her a formal letter reminding her about the serious nature of criminal destruction of property, the potential for civil litigation, and how her documented threats and admissions weren't exactly helping her legal position. The tone of that letter made it clear that this wasn't some idle threat or emotional outburst. This was a legitimate legal matter that could have real consequences for her future. The money hit my bank account the very next morning. The exact amount, transferred electronically with no accompanying message or explanation. She probably had to dip into her housing fund that she never actually contributed to when we were living together, or maybe Daddy bailed her out again, like he had probably done countless times before in her life. Either way, I didn't care where the money came from or how much it inconvenienced her to pay it. The important thing was that she had learned there were actual consequences for destructive behavior. She tried showing up at the condo building the following day, apparently thinking she could somehow talk her way back into my life or convince me to reconsider my decision. Security called up to my unit and said, "Sir, there's a woman here saying she forgot some of her belongings and needs to come up." I told them very clearly, "She has nothing here anymore. Don't let her up under any circumstances." According to the front desk security guard, she caused quite a dramatic scene in the lobby. She started screaming about how I was threatening and harassing her by demanding payment for damages, and she actually threatened to call the police herself. The irony of her threatening legal action after what she had done wasn't lost on me at all. It was like an arsonist complaining to the fire department about smoke damage. 3 days later, I got a message from Derek that said, "Bro, you need to check this out." He sent me a screenshot of Brooke's Instagram story, which was exactly the kind of predictable pity party performance I had expected from her. It was the usual black background with white text format that people use when they want to seem deep and philosophical about their personal drama. Sometimes you give your all to someone who was never capable of loving you back, one slide read. Growth comes from pain, said another, accompanied by a blurry artistic photo of a candle or some other meaningless object that was supposed to convey deep emotion and spiritual awakening. But it got significantly worse from there. She started reaching out to our mutual friends, trying to control the narrative about what had happened between us. She was telling people that I had completely blindsided her, that she was just joking around at the party, and that I had deliberately made her look bad on purpose because I wanted to humiliate her in front of everyone. She tried to completely flip the script and rewrite history. According to her new version of events, I had been pulling away from the relationship for months. I was emotionally distant and unavailable, and she was just venting her frustrations at the party when that question about proposals came up. Funny how the part where she destroyed thousands of dollars worth of my personal property somehow didn't make it into her victim narrative. Selective memory is apparently a very powerful thing when you're trying to avoid taking responsibility for your actions. Kendra messaged me directly to ask if I was okay and to get my side of the story. She told me that Brooke had tried to claim we were having serious relationship problems and that I was emotionally unstable and had acted out in an unpredictable way. That particular accusation actually made me laugh out loud. Yeah, I guess being calm and composed while walking away from a toxic situation is now considered a mental breakdown. Sure, that makes perfect sense. So I decided to send Kendra the full, unedited version of what had actually happened. I included the complete story about the group chat messages I had discovered, the months of calculated cold treatment, and most importantly, I sent her photographs of my completely destroyed PC setup, along with Brooke's charming little goodbye note that said, "Bet you didn't see this coming, Mr. Predictable." Kendra didn't respond immediately, but when she finally did, it was a string of WTF texts followed by, "You're not going to believe this." Apparently, she had some additional information that was about to make this whole situation even more interesting. See, someone at the party had actually filmed the entire rooftop scene. Not just the moment when I dropped the keys and walked away, but the complete setup, including Brooke's entire comment verbatim. From her saying, "I won't let him propose," all the way through calling me a beta placeholder and explaining how I was just good for paying bills and fixing things around the apartment. Kendra was absolutely floored when she saw the video evidence. She said she couldn't believe that Brooke had the sheer audacity to try and rewrite that interaction in her favor, when there was literal video proof of exactly what she had said and how she had said it. Then Kendra told me something that really surprised me. The video had already gotten out beyond our immediate friend group. Someone at the party had posted it to TikTok, and it was starting to gain some serious traction online. I decided to check it out for myself, and sure enough, there it was. The caption read, "When your girl calls you a placeholder and he deletes her from his life in real time." The video already had 500,000 views and was climbing rapidly. The comment section was absolutely wild. People were writing things like, "She deserved that," "Bro walked out like a villain and I'm here for it," and "She really thought she had main character energy Ulmao." The general consensus seemed to be that justice had been served in the most satisfying way possible. Brooke must have seen the video and the comments because she turned off her comment sections on all her social media accounts that same day. A few people I hadn't talked to since college messaged me directly with laughing emojis and comments like, "Yo, legend move." I didn't respond to any of these messages because I wasn't looking for internet fame or validation. I just wanted her completely out of my life. But Brooke, predictably, wasn't done embarrassing herself yet. She decided to try the sympathy angle next, which was probably her last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. She sent a message to Derek asking him to talk to me on her behalf. In her message, she claimed that she missed the connection we used to have, and that she had only acted out at the party because she was scared that I was going to leave her. But here's the thing. That's not fear, that's entitlement rotting from the inside out. You don't systematically disrespect someone for months and then claim it was because you were afraid of losing them. That's like deliberately setting fire to your own house and then calling it a coping mechanism for your anxiety about homelessness. I never replied to Derek's message. I never even said Brooke's name again after that point. I was completely done with her and everything she represented in my life. 3 months of living alone in my own condo felt like a goddamn rebirth. No drama, no emotional deadweight, no walking on eggshells. Just me, my upgraded PC setup, music playing as loud as I wanted, wearing hoodies on repeat, and finally experiencing the kind of peace that actually felt like it belonged to me. And then, of course, she tried one more desperate attempt to get back into my life. About a week after the TikTok video went viral, and hit over 2 million views, I found a handwritten letter stuck in my mailbox. There was no envelope or proper addressing, just folded paper shoved between some Amazon packages, like a middle school note passed in class. The letter said, "I didn't mean what I said. I was just trying to sound confident in front of everyone. I didn't realize how hurtful I sounded until you walked away and I saw how everyone was looking at me." Yeah, because nothing says sincere apology like waiting until your reputation gets completely destroyed online before you develop any self-awareness about your behavior. She closed the letter with, "If you ever want to talk, I'm still here." But here's the reality. No, you're not still here. You were here once, living in my apartment, sharing my life, benefiting from my generosity and support. You just treated it like some kind of audition that you thought you were too good for. Like you were doing me a favor by gracing me with your presence. I didn't reply to her letter. I folded it neatly and tossed it directly into the paper shredder along with the junk mail, right where it belonged. It felt surprisingly satisfying to watch it get cut into tiny, irretrievable pieces. Derek and Kendra started stopping by my place every couple of weeks, bringing pizza or just hanging out without any pressure for me to entertain them or worry about someone rolling their eyes when I talked about work projects. They were just genuine friends who actually gave a shit about me as a person. It was refreshing to have people in my space who didn't make me feel like I had to walk on eggshells or apologize for existing. "Dude, that TikTok is at like 2 million views now," Derek mentioned one night while scrolling through his phone. "You're basically a cult hero to guys everywhere who've dealt with this kind of manipulation." "I don't care," I replied, and I genuinely meant it. I wasn't trying to be famous for having terrible taste in women or for becoming some kind of internet meme. Internet fame was never my goal. Living in peace and maintaining my self-respect was what mattered to me. Kendra laughed so hard at my response that she almost spit out her drink. "Trust me, nobody thinks you have bad taste," she said. "They think you have epic self-respect and handled the situation perfectly. Whatever people thought about the situation online, it didn't really matter to me. I wasn't seeking validation from strangers on the internet. I just wanted to move forward with my life without any drama or toxic relationships weighing me down." Meanwhile, Brooke's social media presence went through what looked like the 5 stages of grief in real time, and it was almost fascinating to watch from a psychological perspective. First came the vague posts about betrayal and unexpected endings, with lots of cryptic quotes about people showing their true colors. Then came the anger phase, with posts about men who supposedly can't handle strong, independent women who know their worth. Next was the bargaining stage, featuring inspirational content about working on yourself and growing from your mistakes, clearly hoping that people would see her as someone who was learning and evolving. The depression phase hit hard with black and white photo filters and song lyrics about loneliness and heartbreak. Finally came what looked like acceptance, or at least what she wanted people to think was acceptance. She started posting normal content again. Real estate photos, brunch pictures with friends, group photos where she was trying way too hard to look happy and carefree. It was the classic "look how great I'm doing without him" performance that everyone could see through. I had muted all of Brooke's social media accounts ages ago, but Kendra kept me updated against my will about what was happening behind the scenes. According to her, Brooke wasn't actually taking the breakup as well as she was pretending to online. The carefully curated posts about thriving and moving forward were apparently just a facade to hide how badly she was actually handling the situation. Kendra told me that Brooke had been calling mutual friends at 2 a.m., crying and looking for someone to talk to about what had happened. She would show up to group events looking like she hadn't slept properly in days, with dark circles under her eyes and that hollow look that comes from genuine emotional distress. Once, she even cornered Derek at a bar and grilled him extensively about whether I was seeing anyone new, clearly hoping to get information about my personal life. The truth was, there wasn't anyone new in my life romantically. I hadn't even tried dating since the breakup. I wasn't opposed to the idea of meeting someone eventually, but I wasn't rushing into another relationship situation where I might end up feeling like someone's personal ATM with a pulse attached to it. I was perfectly content being single and focusing on my own peace of mind. She came by my office workplace yesterday, according to my coworker Nathan, who told me about it one afternoon while we were reviewing some site plans. He just casually dropped this information like a bomb in the middle of our work conversation. "Oh, by the way, your ex Brooke stopped by earlier," he said. "She was asking if you were seeing anyone from work." "What the hell?" I responded, genuinely surprised that she would have the audacity to show up at my workplace. "What did you tell her?" "That it was none of her business. Nathan replied, "and that security doesn't appreciate unscheduled visitors who don't have legitimate business here." I just nodded and went back to work, not wanting to give the situation any more energy than it had already consumed. But inside, I was thinking, this woman really can't take the loss and move on with her life like a normal person. Then came a series of emails that escalated from annoying to genuinely concerning. First, she started emailing my personal account, which I blocked immediately. Then she somehow got hold of my work email address and started sending messages there, which our IT department filtered after the third one came through. The subject lines were things like, "We need to talk, and please just hear me out," as if I owed her any kind of conversation or closure after everything she had put me through. Every single one of those emails went straight to the delete folder without being opened or read. One Friday evening, I got home from work to find a package sitting outside my door. There was no shipping label or return address, just my name written on it in handwriting that I immediately recognized as hers. I knew instantly that it was from Brooke, and I didn't even bother bringing it inside my apartment. I walked that package straight to the dumpster behind my building and threw it in without a second thought. Whatever was inside that box, apology gifts, printed photos, handwritten letters, sentimental items from our relationship, none of it was worth reopening that emotional wound or giving her another opportunity to manipulate my feelings. A week later, her cousin reached out to me, probably at Brooke's request. The message said that Brooke was supposedly in a really bad emotional place and just needed some kind of closure to move forward with her life. I texted back a simple, direct response. "Closure happened at the party. There's nothing else to say." The cousin replied with a whole paragraph about the importance of forgiveness and giving people second chances, about how everyone makes mistakes and deserves an opportunity to make things right. I didn't even bother reading past the first line before blocking that number too. I was done being lectured about forgiveness by people who hadn't experienced months of calculated emotional manipulation. See, that's the thing these people don't seem to understand about closure. Closure isn't a conversation that you have with someone. It's not a negotiation or a mediation session where both parties get to present their side of the story. Closure is a decision that you make for yourself. And I had made mine the exact second she called me her beta placeholder in front of a room full of people. Her friends kicked off a whisper campaign like clockwork, probably coordinated through their group chats, just like everything else they did. I ran into one of them at the grocery store, and she just happened to mention that Brooke had really changed and was going to therapy now. She made sure to tell me that Brooke was working on herself and had gained some valuable insights about her behavior patterns. That's great for her, I thought. I hope her therapist warned her that consequences don't come with a refund policy and that personal growth doesn't automatically entitle you to forgiveness from people you've hurt. Then, about 6 months later, Kendra hit me up with a message that caught me completely off guard. She sent me a screenshot of Brooke's new Instagram post. No caption, just pure visual impact. Brooke was completely glammed up in a tight black dress with new hair and this whole bad bitch energy that was totally different from how she used to present herself online. She looked dangerous, honestly. The kind of attractive that makes bad decisions sound like a good time. The kind of stunning that used to cost me sleep when we were together, and now just costs her whatever dignity she had left. Kendra followed up the screenshot with a direct question. "Be honest, would you give her another shot if she reached out?" I looked at the photo for a few seconds, taking in this new version of Brooke, who was clearly trying to reinvent herself as someone more exciting and unpredictable. I replied to Kendra with complete honesty. "Who's that?" She immediately responded with, "Stop playing. You know exactly who that is." So I decided to tell her exactly what I was thinking without any filter or diplomatic language. "Sure, if she's into being a side quest with no dialogue, no storyline, and definitely no boss fight," I wrote back. "Friends with benefits, maybe, if the mood strikes me. But if she says the word proposal again, I'm throwing myself off the balcony with my PC." Kendra left me on read after that response, which probably meant she thought I was being too harsh or cynical about the whole situation. But I was just being realistic about what Brooke had shown me about her character and what kind of relationship dynamic would be appropriate given that knowledge. So here's my question for you all. What do you think about this whole situation? Should I give her a second chance? I mean, my ex is definitely looking like temptation with high heels these days, and there's something to be said for physical attraction and chemistry. Nah, I'm just messing with you. Sort of. Maybe if she signs a non-disclosure agreement and brings tacos, we can talk.